Welcome back to the Games Club. So I've been playing Deadly Premonition, as I hope you have too, and today we're going to talk about the game thus far. We'll try to keep the discussion spoiler-free, and we ask that you do the same. So, this episode, we're mostly just going to be focusing on my initial impressions, and Stacey's going to lend a little bit of context for the game.
Deadly Premonition. What do you think?
I'm actually really liking Deadly Premonition, and when I first started playing it, I actually first started playing it a couple months ago, and I didn't think I was going to like it. I mostly got it because I think, A, it was on sale, and B, you wouldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah, and I think you sent me a text like, Stacey, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this game? What have you done?
And I think it's one of those games where people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. It's definitely growing on me, and once you get past the first little forest scene,
like the prologue,
then you kind of get to meet the town itself. Although I haven't met many of the characters in the town, it's an experience.
I told ya.
I will say that my absolute least favorite thing about the game is the combat, the over-the-shoulder Resident Evil 4 kind of it's just so bad.
Yeah, and I think it was even worse on the Xbox. I think they improved it for the director's cut that you're playing.
This is the improved version? Oh, God.
This is the improved version.
And the sound effects are mixed so high, so they, like, come out of nowhere, and I don't get freaked out by the ghosts or anything, but when I pick something up and it's like, I'm like, ah.
The sound mixing is very strange, and there's points where I think it's deliberate, because it seems almost like the characters are shouting over music cues or other things.
Help to hear you better if you could sit a little closer.
But it's like, is that, like, did they do that on purpose, or am I just imagining it to create, like, a context? But you said you don't like the shooting. Do you at least like, the driving and exploring and all the other stuff that you can do? Because it's like, it does have kind of, there's definitely a lot of Resident Evil 4 in there, but there's also, the open world craze of the late 2000s.
I wouldn't say that I like the driving. I appreciate the thoroughness of the driving as it pertains to actual driving in the real world. It's one of those things where I don't have a license, and as I was playing this game driving, I was like, this is why I don't drive.
Well, it's funny, because, like, the first time you drive, you have, like, the sheriff and the deputy, like, everybody in the backseat. And I know I was running off-road, crashing into things, and they did not miss a beat in their conversation. And so that was, like, the moment where it's like, okay, it really doesn't matter. Even when the instructions come up and they're so complicated, some of the arrows pointing to the buttons are crossed, like, okay, this doesn't really matter. No one in the world uses a turn signal. No one stays on the road. But it's just weird little touches like that for me kind of make it. It's like there is no reason for there to be a turn signal button. But I'm going to use it since it's there. Yeah, there's lots of little touches like that in any other game would have been kind of contributing to that verisimilitude, but instead it just comes across as pointing out how bizarre and artificial this world is. But at the same time, it is really compelling in the way that it does it. So,
like, you can't jump, but you can shave and do laundry.
You have to do laundry.
You do?
Yeah, like, you get flies and people don't like you.
Wow. And then you also have to eat, I think.
Yeah, you have to eat. You have to watch, like, how tired you are. You have to watch your hunger.
It sounds overly complicated, but I haven't run into any issues.
I think the only times I ran into them were when I was doing, like, ridiculous side quests where it's like you had to be at this certain spot on a sunny afternoon. So I kept just, like, sleeping at the spot until I got a sunny afternoon. And then I'd run into problems. Like, I'd have to, like, you'll find there are certain places where, like, there are fruit trees growing and a bench where you sleep on or something. So it's like you'll find these, like, strategic locations to bum around until you get to do the side quest.
Wow.
Am I selling you on this?
You're something. Yeah, I actually I've done one side quest, and I'm not sure if I'd call it a side quest. It felt more like a time trial where I'm just driving from point A to point B in under X amount of time. And it was so frustrating because I don't like driving that I was like, I don't think I'm going to do any of these side quests because you're talking about the side quests so much, but now that I know that they're more kind of involved and rewarding from a narrative / character standpoint, I think I'll be on board with them.
I think like the kind of litmus test for whether or not someone will like this game is one of the side quests involving a character named Wandering Sigourney. Mm-hmm. And Wandering Sigourney is an elderly woman. She's the analog to the log lady in Twin Peaks, but she has a pot that she carries around. And you'll find her randomly around town. She's wearing a bathrobe and one slipper and holding this pot and dancing in place going, I have to get home. My pot will get cold. And so you have to drive her home in a set amount of time. The whole time she's yelling at you, stop driving so safely. I need to get home. And so at the end, when you get her home, she'll say something to the effect of like, you know, you'll have to just get to know the pot better to know its secrets. And there's a part of you when you get there that's like, this game is ridiculous. But then there's another part that's like, I really need to know that pot secret. It's like, if you're that person, if that's your reaction, this is the game for you.
Screw this murder mystery. I need to know what's in the pot. I mean, and that is very Twin Peaks too, where you're just kind of like, you want to know not only who killed Laura Palmer, but also like, why is the log lady such a weirdo? So I've only seen the first season of Twin Peaks, but right from the get-go, in that introductory, like, cinematic, it draws so much from the opening moments of Twin Peaks. You find Anna, who is, you know, the game's Laura Palmer, and then you kind of get these really over-the-top reactions to her death, like the mother just kind of like looking at the photograph, holding it at a weird angle above her. And you know, in the show, I'm never quite sure how to feel during those moments, because the actors are trying to portray such genuine emotion, but you kind of linger on them, and it's kind of overdone just enough that you're kind of like, is this supposed to be funny, or am I just a terrible person? Or is it just the early 90s, you know?
Yeah, right.
And so this time it feels definitely more like it's definitely on purpose.
You know, like in Twin Peaks, it's the exaggeration that kind of blurs the line between like human and inhuman, kind of. But then like there's no question in Deadly Premonition, they're these cheap character models. They're as you
shiny.
mentioned before to me, yeah, they're shiny. They have the same 5 canned animations for everything. But at the same time, like I will champion the actor that plays York forever. I think he does an amazing job.
You know, I don't think that the voice acting itself is bad. I feel like it's very intentional, and that it's working with like an obviously terrible script, but which also is kind of intentionally terrible.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like everything in this game, there's a sense that like, yeah, but maybe they meant to do that.
I mean, they put flies on you if you don't wash your suit. Like,
yeah.
How much of this is actually terrible and how much of this is intentional? And that's the thing that makes it so, like, I can't wait to talk to people about this game. I can't wait to, like, you know that weird thing that happened? You know how the cop lady has that weird sassy stance she does even when she's not being sassy? Yeah, right. You know?
Why did the squirrels sound like monkeys?
Exactly.
It really, especially once you get to get loose in the town and drive around, there's so much to just discover for yourself, and it just gets weirder. And like, and the people are so like, a lot, I don't want to oversell the people of Greenvale, because I mean, a lot of them are stock characters. Yeah. They're really silly stock characters. But at the same time, it is so endearing. And you find yourself, you spend so much time getting to know their stories and to like help them or to break in their car or like anything. It's like, it becomes its own animal at that point. Like Wandering Sigourney, you know, you want to know what's in that pot after spending a few hours with it.
And I think for me, the turning point from when I was like, I don't know if I like this game or not, was when you first get to the police station and you have to find the right keychain.
Squirrel!
And it's a squirrel keychain, except you bring it back and he's like, that's not the right squirrel. And then there are like 3 or 4 different keychains. And I'm like, okay, this is actually kind of amazing, even though it's terrible.
And like, every time you bring him the wrong keychain, there's like this music that plays, and he gives you like a Wikipedia entry about that kind of squirrel.
Yes.
Like you can tell because of the length of its tail. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Oh, it like that's when I was sold. That's when I was like, okay, I'm on board.
This is a Siberian flying squirrel.
It's closer to a land-based squirrel. The Siberian flying squirrel is larger than the southern flying squirrel.
It's those things where you're like, okay, that has to be intentional.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're doing. And have you gotten to the point since you've done some driving where you get to talk to yourself?
I have not, because they've always been in my car with me.
Oh, okay. So you really haven't experienced Deadly Premonition yet.
I guess not.
Yeah. One of the reasons I started playing it was the old Feedback podcast from G4. They compared it to, like, the Evil Dead franchise, and that it's, like, a very ambitious project made with love, very clearly made with love by someone that just did not have the resources. Like, it's funny because it was originally released in Japan on the PlayStation 3 as a full-price title.
Yeah.
It was called Red Sea's Profile. It was, $60-odd or whatever they charged for PlayStation 3 games, and it did not take off at all.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, but then they repackaged it as a budget title here in the U.S., and if you got the original, it was originally released on the Xbox in the U.S. There was no PlayStation version, and if you got the Xbox game, like, the cover looks like the most generic slasher movie ever. So you would have no idea going in what this game was. It's just like, oh, it's a horror game, but it was so much more. So I don't know if this, and like Swery has a history of now doing these weird pastiche games. Like he just released D4 right before Deadly Premonition, or some years before he did Spy Fiction for the PlayStation 2, which I still have not played. I have it, but I haven't played it. And it was kind of a play on the Metal Gear Solid thing. And so it's like, it seems like he has a very strong aesthetic and an idea of like what his games will be. Like, he's one of the few true auteurs in this medium, I feel like. But his games are so bizarre and terrible by so many measures, but so good. Like,
and it's so interesting and strange, the director's cut cover, like the retail box, it's just the logo and then it's Swery signed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like,
you should know who he is now.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, like, The Godfather, kind of, where, like, Francis Ford Coppola has signed. I'm not even sure if that's a thing, but that's just what's popping into my head, and it's just kind of like, well, that's what we're putting it on the same level as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, there are so few designers that we know by name. There's, like, the few rock stars, like Kojima, and, like...
Levine!
Yeah, Levine! And it's just amazing to me that this guy with an ambitious, bizarre little project has elevated that status. And I mean, it is because it was such a dud in Japan. It really is all due to the independent gaming press here and the word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I think he's even, I don't remember if it was at GDC or where, he talked about the idea that, like, in Japan, the press is Famitsu.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
So it's like they don't have that kind of independent, at least to the level that exists here.
And it's so interesting that it's such a weird, in the US, a little budget title that was so strange, and it was just so very word of mouth the way. And then, Microsoft brings them up for the Xbox One launch as one of, like, the developers that they got to make a game.
Yeah.
Like, that's
and it's
huge.
gotten great reviews too. Like, yeah, you're right. That's huge. The fact that it's like, the guy that made Deadly Premonition is making our game for our hardware.
Yeah.
Like, it does make me want an Xbox One though.
It really does. So those are just a few of my initial impressions. Are you enjoying Greenvale? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe and come back in 2 weeks for the final spoiler-filled discussion of Deadly Premonition.
You sure do know a lot about squirrels.
Stacey, it's in the coffee. FG, clear as a crisp spring morning. It must be our final girl episode coming out next week.